Relations and the Southern Poverty Law Center jumped on board immediately, blaming President Trump's rhetoric.
He has been very silent. The silence has been deafening in terms of the amount of hate crimes and actual, well, I say, white terrorist attacks that have taken place in the United States of America.
Mr. Trump's xenophobic, vitriolic campaign, coupled with his attacks on political correctness, have told many people that the gloves are off and that they are allowed, basically, to act on their worst instincts.
Many alleged journalists weren't any more restrained than that. The blog Vox called the crime, quote, the latest in a wave of racist attacks across America that followed President Trump's election. The Associated Press chimed in with a piece entitled this, Unease about white supremacy grows after Portland stabbing. President Trump was shamed for taking too long to tweet about the attack. The message was clear. This is what Trump's America looks like. Not one to let a crisis go to waste, the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, used the killings to ban free speech itself, calling for the cancellation of 2 upcoming political rallies.
I'm appealing to the organizers of the alt-right events to cancel the events that they've scheduled. My main concern is that they are coming to peddle a message of hatred and of bigotry.
Oh, the very message that caused the murders, except none of this was actually true. The accused killer was not a Trump voter. He actually backed Jill Stein and Bernie Sanders in the 2016 race and indeed called for violent attacks on Trump supporters during the election. A video from the day before the stabbing shows him denouncing not just Muslims, but also Jews and Christians. In a fake Facebook posting from last June, he attacked Hillary Clinton for allegedly keeping Honduran refugees out of this country, hardly the behavior of a coherent white supremacist. At the alt-right rally he supposedly attended in April, he was apparently there to pick fights with everyone, whether they loved Trump or hated him. Once you dig a little, you find that this guy wasn't a right-winger, but an unstable maniac who hated almost everybody and maybe inevitably was going to lash out at some point. But don't tell that to the media, though. Like progressives everywhere, they see racists under every bed, even, believe it or not, at Evergreen State College in the state of Washington. Evergreen is one of the most left-wing schools in the Western Hemisphere, but its students have become convinced the place has been infiltrated by bigots. To root them out, progressives there have occupied administration buildings, ordered white people off the campus with the threat of force. Watch this.
Hey, hey, oh, oh. These racist teachers have got to go. Hey, hey, oh, oh.
Whiteness is the most violent system to ever breathe.
Black power! Black power! Black power!
It's not an accident that all of our administration is white.
Right.
It's not an accident. That is systematic as
I'm tired of white people talking about what black and brown people need. You don't know.
you and the police.
While our leaders in Washington fret about Vladimir Putin and his bloggers, this is what's going on in the rest of America. Where are the people in charge exactly? Well, they're abasing themselves before their tormentors, of course. George Bridges, the cringing president of Evergreen, actually thanked the rioters as they screamed at him. He expressed his, quote, gratitude for their, quote, passion and courage in trampling the rights of everyone else. How did we get here exactly? Well, there are a lot of answers to that question, but a main one is this. The left's concerns for equal rights for all has been replaced by the diversity agenda, which is a destructive obsession with race. It trumps free speech, which is routinely suppressed in its name. It obviates the rule of law, which aggrieved parties can freely ignore, as you just saw. In the name of tolerance, it demands conformity. Its calls for justice are often an excuse for violence. It is totalitarian, and suddenly it is everywhere. What does this mean for the rest of us? Brit Hume is Fox's senior political analyst. He joins us, as he always does, for Perspective. Brit, it seems like this is accelerating.
It does to me. It seems that way to me too, Tucker. And I think it's fair to say that free speech is kind of the old gray mare of campus life now. It ain't what it used to be. And in places such as the University of Southern California, University of California at Berkeley, which was the birthplace, you may recall, of Mario Savio back in the 60s, yes, and the free speech movement, we now have efforts to suppress speech. We have protesters who heckle, either the threat of heckling or rioting leads to cancellations of scheduled speeches by the likes of Ann Coulter. You don't have to agree with Ann Coulter to believe that in this country she ought to be able to go and speak wherever she likes, and people should be free to attend, and she ought to be able to get her words out without being heckled into silence. But this in this day and age is what principally the left has come to. It's triumphed in a number of areas, civil rights being a conspicuous example, Tucker. But now that the great victories in these movements, civil rights, equal rights, have been basically won. They're looking for new fields to conquer, new grievances to work on, and now we have them wanting to suppress speech in the name of diversity, in the name of tolerance, and so on. It's
But
remarkable.
The people in charge of the left, its institutions, have a lot to lose here. I mean, a society where people aren't allowed to say what they think, where people are punished unequally based on their skin color, where the mob gets to determine policy. I mean, that is a real threat to the people in charge, and they're not speaking up to defend themselves.
Well, the college administrators, I think, in this respect, are among the worst offenders. They're confronted with a choice. When a controversial speaker is about to appear on campus, and there are threats of heckling at the least and perhaps rioting at the most, they have two choices. One is, the thing they want to do is they want to avoid disturbing incidents. They want to avoid a riot. They want to avoid an incident when someone is shouted down.
Right.
The hard way to do that is to police the event sufficiently that you suppress that kind of behavior, the rioting and the heckling. The easy way to do it is to cancel the event. They are repeatedly now choosing the easy way.
What's so striking is how little coverage any of this gets. I mean, you got to think that 10 years ago or 20 years ago, if a college campus, Evergreen is a place I've heard of, I mean, it's a real college apparently, were demanded that people of a certain skin color leave and then threatened any ones who stayed and then occupied all the buildings on campus, shut the place down. At least it would merit like a note on the front page of the New York Times. It's not there.
No, it is not, and it is a story that the newspapers with their leftist sympathies don't find as interesting as stories about, you know, white supremacists kills 2 in hate crime on train or wherever. It's just the way it works. And this is, you know, part of what we experience daily in our biased media.
But I wonder if this, I mean, the consequences of this, I mean, it's radicalizing an entire generation of students, not just on the left, but also on the right. I mean, there are kids who are taking their cues from this and believing it all, internalizing it, but there are others who are saying, I reject everything you say, and it's making them radical too, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's particularly disturbing that this is centered so much as it is on campuses, which are supposed to be the very places where controversial speech, even hate speech, can be heard and can be spoken. And that the idea has always been the answer to speech you don't like is speech you do like.
Right.
Combat ideas with ideas, combat bad ideas with better ones, and so on. Campuses are supposed to be the place that nourish that atmosphere, and at the moment, in too many places, that's not happening.
So let me just ask you, finally, a historical question. I'm not saying you were alive in the 50s, but just for the sake of argument. Let's say you, okay, you live in it. So the 50s are presented historically as a period of total conformity in American life, where everyone had to act the same way, you know, under threat of punishment. Was the